meeting. We have an agenda that has been prepared, and therefore I'd like to officially call this meeting to order. And I will entertain a motion from the council to approve the agenda.
So move.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposers, nay. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want a hard copy of the agenda, it's only one item on the agenda, but you can see our city clerk. She will make sure you get a copy. But at this time, we will have our first hearing for 25R-09, the intent to opt out on floating homestead exemption, House Bill 581, presented by our city manager, Mr. Ray Gibson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening, sir.
I think this is maybe the fifth time I've talked about this. Anyways, I want to make clear, so we're going to do a brief presentation tonight, but I just want to walk through. I do want to talk about opting out, first and foremost, before going on and talking a bit about the bill itself. I do not want to focus this evening on the FLOP, even though that's a part of the bill, and we're not really, it's not really up for consideration right now, even though if we all opt in with the other cities and county, that will be potentially ask for FLOS, but I'm not going to get too detailed on that tonight. So let's talk first and foremost about opting out. I want to make clear to all the residents that we had a town hall meeting a couple weeks ago, and the intent, in order to meet the requirements of the law, we have to do an intent to opt out in order to have further public hearings. And we heard from the residents, and there were some that were concerned with us automatically opting in. So this in no way means we're going to move forward to opt out. This is to get more feedback from the community, and I'm sure there'll be some questions and concerns tonight about the particular bill. I want to make clear for everyone that we are not, this is not a guaranteed, hey, we're opting out. We just want to get some more feedback through the public hearing process. So, as we've talked about many times before, the why of this bill, House Bill 581, skyrocketing assessments around Metro Atlanta and state of Georgia, which have led to higher property taxes for residents. Constituents letting their legislative delegations know, let our legislative representatives know, which led to a serious discussion and a law put in place. Are we happy with the law? Probably not, but we will do our best to talk about it tonight. The support of the bill, as you see, the Senate voted 52-0. The House voted 164-2 to put it on through a referendum. And the referendum, statewide, it passed 63% to 37%. In Fayette County, 57% to 43%. Once again, I think when people go to vote on this stuff and they're told, I'm going to have lower taxes, of course, that's going to get the more positive result. But we always got to be careful when we talk about constitutional amendments. So the components of the bill, like I mentioned earlier, I really want to focus tonight on the statewide floating homestead exemption. I'm going to have Mike a little bit too and talk a bit about how the true impacts on the city of Fayetteville. So let's talk about the floating homestead exemption. This is an adjusted base year homestead exemption. So we currently have a fixed exemption through the county. I think it's $5,000, Mike? $5,000. This is an adjusted. So how this will work is the base year will be 2024, and the base assessed value, the base year will be the assessed value for 2024, and then that'll be the same. So our taxes that you paid in 2024 will be the same for 2025. Beyond that point, we'll be looking at a CPI as set by the Commissioner of Revenue for the state of Georgia. We don't know what that process is going to be, but it is still, it can't be greater than, the increase can't be greater than 3%. And as I mentioned, based on the consumer price index. Now let's walk through a quick example. If you have a $400,000 home, which is rare now in Fayetteville and Fayette County, taxable base year value of $160,000. Now, if that fair market value of that home goes up to $425,000 in 2026, you have a taxable base year value now of you have a taxable value of $170,000. So if the CPI increases by 2%, so the Georgia Tax Commissioner, our Department of Revenue Commissioner says 2% increase, CPI increase by 2% in 2026, the adjusted base value will now be $163,200 $163,200. The exemption floats now to be $6,800 of the assessed value. You take that 6,800, multiply it by our millage, which is 5.646, and you have a savings of $38.39 on the city's ad valorem property tax. All right, that's just an example. So obviously it'd be a bit more if you have a $500,000 home or higher. So for homes, if you to buy a house in 2028, your base year value will be moved to be the fair market value in 2027. Similar if you bought the house in 2029, it'll be 2028, the fair market value of your home at that time. And there's also substantial property change. This is probably not as clear in the law for us, but it's alterations to your property that increase the value, but it's also anything that may decrease the value. That's considered by the assessors as they do these property assessments. And one important thing, homeowners cannot transfer exemption to a new property. So let's look at this quickly on the overhead, the variance between the floating and the traditional homestead exemption. So on a fair market value home of $500,000, you're going to have a assessed value of $200,000. So if you're in a traditional exemption, which you would have, you see the increase. First of all, the fair market value is going to go up between 2024 and 2028. These are just estimates. These aren't. Yes. So can I finish? Then we'll. These are just estimates. We just put these figures here, and then so the net assessment, as you see, goes up every year. In the traditional, you see that assessment goes up, so your taxes are based on that increase. So if you have, I put the county and the city in this chart. So the county millage rate at 4.73, and the county millage rate at 5.646 would give you the increases you see on the one column here, and I can point to it. So these are the increases you would see. These are the property tax increases based on the traditional way of doing, where there's no cap, there's no 3%, there's no cap on the assessments. So what I do also want to point out here, you can see that the county has that $5,000 fixed exemption, which comes off the $200,000. But for the first 2 years, the taxes are the same. We're looking at House Bill 581 now and its impact. So every year, what we estimated, every year from 25 on, we estimated a 3% cap. So the difference in taxes, you come over to the net savings, would be over here. So this is for county and city taxes. It doesn't include the school board. You're 202, 340, 418, and 427. So I know there'll be questions probably about this particular table, but it just kind of shows you the example of if we continue traditional, we opt out, we continue the traditional collection exemption, it's obviously a lot higher. You can see the differences. Not a lot higher, but there's some difference. And this basically is just your dollar at work. You got the school M&O 59.52%, city taxes 22.8%, and county taxes at 17.68%. So you see the school board makes up a large majority of the property tax, the ad valorem property tax. Now how's this going to affect the bottom line? So the taxable value of any home obviously can't increase more than 3%, as we mentioned. If a city opts into this program, into this bill, it automatically will appear. The assessors will take that we've opted in, and everything will be normal. You don't want to report anything to them. And then the big important one too in this discussion is House Bill 581 does not apply to non-homestead properties that include non-homestead residential, commercial, and industrial. All right, so we're pretty good financially here at the city, and that's this second to last point. We will at some point see impact on our revenues. as we go out, probably 10 years, 5 to 10 years, we'll start to see a little bit of an impact. We'll be impacted. What, Mike? How much a year? To start out, maybe 100,000.
Anywhere from maybe 40,000 in year one, 75 in year two, and then it can get bigger after that.
But it also depends on how like other economic development initiatives bring more revenue to this city, which we feel pretty comfortable that we're going to be getting a lot of additional revenues. But I did want to point out lastly that it will create property tax inequities. And when we had the town hall meeting, some people said, well, I've lived here that long and I deserve to have some kind of benefit to being a loyal resident in your community for a long time. And that was a great point. So what this chart shows is if I buy a home in 2020, if the year purchase 2025, my tax burden is $134,391. Okay? In 2035, if I buy the neighbor comes in and buys the home beside me, because theirs is now based on the fair market value of 2034, they're now being taxed on, their tax burden is based on 200,000. So that's where that inequity, if you move, you gotta readjust now to the previous year's fair market value of the home. Council, you clear on that particular one? I know it's. And then Mike, you want to come up and talk a bit about some of the impacts on our.
So what this is our 5-year history that we put out in 2024, and I added 2019 to make it a 6-year history. And the real reason for this is at the very bottom. You'll see growth and reassessment. So in 2019, we had a 6.83% change in our digest. 4.83% of that was pure new growth. 2% of that was reassessment. You go across that line all the way across on the bottom, you get over to the very far right. In the last 6 years, we've averaged 2.51% of new growth and 8.24% of reassessments. And that reassessments really hit us in those last 3 years. Almost 13%, almost 15%, and 11%. All on reassessments. The reason I put this on here is every year when we get ready to come before council to set a budget, when we look at our estimated digest, we use a 3% growth rate. So in the last 6 years, I've averaged 2.51% of pure new growth, something that wasn't here last year that is here this year. And we've averaged 8.4% of reassessments. This House Bill 581 only affects homesteaded properties. And that, on our digest, that totaled about 39% of the digest. So 61% of the digest is still wide open, just like we've been normally doing it. So if we maintain our 2.51% of growth and maintain 0.5% of reassessments, then our budget will not change. We don't reduce our budget or increase our budget or look for revenues from somewhere else. So that's when Ray's saying that we already estimate such a low conservative number that we don't feel like this thing is going to hurt us as much as it will other places that are really dependent on the reassessment values and growth on properties. That's all.
All right, I mentioned about the flexible local option sales tax. The bill gives us an option to go to the voters and ask for a 1 cent additional sales tax. I don't feel that we really need to get in that discussion right now. I don't think there's a lot of support for it, even not just our municipality, but other municipalities in our community, in the county. Like I said, it had to be approved through a voter referendum. And we would all the jurisdictions in the county would have to opt in order for us to make a floss possible. And I put up here, there's also the potential down the road. Those are just options that are on the table that don't really impact what we're talking about too much tonight. So, obviously, Mike and I sat down. We wrote down a list of pros and cons for this particular bill. We were kind of level on the pros and the cons. Like I mentioned earlier, it rewards homeowners, especially those that reside in the community for a long period of time. Reverting back to that particular example I gave you, where you saw the tax burden's $134,000 based on a 10-year plan, and someone moving in 2035, there it is at $200,000 based on the new assessed value. And the taxes aren't disappearing; they're just being shifted to non-homestead properties, commercial, agricultural, industrial, and residential non-homestead. And I mentioned too, potential to create some upward pressure on the millage rate. We're pretty good though. I feel comfortable to say that the impacts, like Mike mentioned, will not be as great on us as other municipalities. So I think we're pretty financially stable, especially with our economic development initiatives that we're not that we've created, but also ones that are ahead of us. So, and I didn't put anything up here about House Bill 92. I just got a confirmation from the Capitol. I just got confirmation from the Capitol that it just passed the Senate. So we'll have to look at that particular bill, but I don't think it's going to impact us much. I think it's going to extend the opt-out timeline to March 31st of 2025. So, Council, any questions or concerns? We can make a
Questions from council for Mr. Gibson? Okay. We're going to open up the floor for comments from the citizens. Please come forward so we can hear you at the microphone. Please give us your name and your address, please. And then we'll hear your questions.
You can sign your name there too.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ms. Winnie.
My name is Winnie Anderson, and I live at 310 Ennisbrook Way, Fayetteville, Georgia. Okay, the reason that I wanted to come and ask a question, okay, it was stated that there aren't any houses that are 500,000. So if the houses are lower, why are we not discussing what we have here? So why are we discussing that? Also, I voted against opting out. So this is my fourth purchase. So I've had homestead exemption, and so what's the purpose of opting out of it? Out of the homestead exemption, especially discussing houses that are 500,000, since we don't have any houses that are that price.
So the big concern for us, you voted to opt. You think we should opt into it? You want?
No, I thought we should just stay. I don't have a problem with what we're doing. So I don't understand why we're opting out.
Oh, so
Essentially what you're saying is we should just opt in, which is the opposite.
So here's the
It's
thing,
basically not doing anything.
this bill that's passed now is being passed by the state. So it's going to be, we can't go back and change anything. Once we opt in, this is forever. So at some point, the big concern we have as the council and staff was, it doesn't say we can't increase the millage rate. There may be a 3% cap, but at some point, and not saying our city will have to do this, but some cities may have to raise their millage rate to collect the taxes that this bill has taken away. Because our services aren't going down in cost. Everyone thinks that government services are going down or staying level, but our costs are all going up as well. Staffing, equipment, materials. So that's our big.
I thought that the data building was going to help with taxes as well as Trillis. So those aren't helping at all.
They are. At the beginning of my presentation, I stated we're having the opt-out discussion. By law, we have to have that. If we want to get more input from the general public, we have to have an intent to opt out. It doesn't mean that they're going to vote to opt out. They just wanted to hear from the residents, and so.
So Trillis does help.
Trilith helps. The data center helps. I said we're pretty economic from an economic development standpoint. We're really strong financially. We're really good right now. So
then why don't we not talk about how, if the properties are 300,000, whatnot, why are we discussing 600,000, 500,000, 600,000? That's not realistic to me, especially.
You could talk 100,000. You could talk any number. That was just put up there to be an example.
Just an example.
Yeah, just an example to see how the changes. This is 437,000. 475,000. Sorry.
That's the average price for a house in Fayetteville.
Any
Okay,
other questions, Ms. Anderson?
well,
Okay. Anyone else? Questions?
I'll talk to you.
Anyone else?
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Anastas, 115 Pineville Court in the city of Fayetteville. The question, I have couple of questions. The first one, I read that after hosting multiple public forums, the city of Fayetteville has issued an intent to opt out, but we said we haven't made a decision yet.
Yeah, so that, by law, we have to do that in order to get more feedback from the residents. So we have to do an intent to opt out and have 3 public hearings. And
Okay.
at the end of those 3 public hearings, the council could say, we decide to opt in. They just wanted to,
Got it.
they felt at the town hall meeting, we were surprised by some of the comments made, so we wanted to make sure we heard from everybody.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Just the way I read it was I was surprised they hadn't made a decision yet. That's all. That's all. The second thing, you mentioned the data center. That's in the county, though, isn't it?
No, it's in the city.
This data center, so we actually extended. Excuse me. I mean, we actually extended the city limits out there.
Yeah, it was,
And how is that? I know it's not a homestead, but how is that? Is that kind of special tax breaks they get?
They get a 10-year tax incentive where it increases 10% every year. So they start out at 0 and it goes 10%.
And how's the value determined of the property? I'm just curious.
Like,
I mean, it seems like a lot. I'm sorry.
oh, like,
I'm just curious how the value, because we're talking about value. How do you determine the value? I know it's not a homestead, but how do you determine the value of the data center or the Trillis Studios for tax
Based on the
reasons?
sales and the income that they generate from their clients that they have. You know, they've got major clients, Microsoft, Google, and
Got
the
it.
income that they generate from them,
That-
carrying their data and maintaining their data and update their systems and everything.
That makes, thank
They
you.
get
That makes a
paid.
lot of sense to me.
Yes.
And you mentioned this lady that the residential area is also taxed. That's in the city of Fayetteville. Is that correct? And they'd be part of this process. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your time.
And
Yes,
there are
sir.
other, and there, I just want to clarify too, there's other things from it's not just the property tax that we're going to see substantial increases from the data center. It's going to be the franchise fees that Georgia Power has to pay, and they're going to be substantial as well.
That's not going to affect our electricity, is it? I mean, they have enough
No,
electricity
no.
over there? 'Cause I hear some horror
I-
stories about that.
Well, there's some concerns, I know we've talked about concerns about the increase in Georgia Power's fees and even the rates, and same with Coweta EMC. We're going to have that discussion.
Okay.
Anita?
Thank you very much for your time.
Ms. Wayne, it looked like you got something else on your mind.
Sorry?
I was talking to Ms. Anderson.
Well, what I was going to say to this gentleman, the property where the data center sits, if I remember correctly, I heard that they paid in taxes in 2023, $30-some thousand, was that the number? And in 2024, that tax bill was 1.2 million?
No, it was-
Was that what it was, that for countywide?
In 2024, it was basically January 1, 2024, it was basically land, so the taxes were based on just land. And in 2025, assessment value is what it looks like on January 1 of that year. And they were moving in to 2 buildings on January 1. So next year, it will be a value of about $1.5 billion on those 2 buildings. And
So
the
that's
tax
one of the
amount will
reasons,
be-
yeah. That's one of the reasons we say as a city, we've been very fortunate and our economic development is helping to cover, the things. Now, everybody used to ask me, will that reduce my taxes on my home? I always say when Peachtree City was developing and they had all that manufacturing and industry and so on, did anybody's home taxes go down? Absolutely not. But what that does will help pay for a lot of infrastructure costs. Everything underground in this county is 20, 30, 40, 50 years old. And just like Atlanta, we're going to see water failures, water line failures, sewer line failures, and so on. And that tax dollars from the data center and Trilith and so on will help pay for that. So it's not going to be an extra burden necessarily on the individual homeowner.
okay, you said something about they get a 0%, so what,
So
the data
it
center?
goes up 10% every year.
But Mine is a 10% or 0%, so why are they being able to be given?
Well,
Because they're coming into the county.
So,
and
well-
It seems like that they would be paying like everybody else.
So each of the cities and the county, I think we're the only ones that really didn't adopt that. But the deal was done by the Fayette County Development Authority. And that's an incentive plan that every municipality has adopted that gives them the leverage to go negotiate with prospective companies to come to our community, and that's what they use.
But why are they giving 0%?
That-
0% in the first year.
First year.
But I don't think.
Because they have no operations
Yeah,
up,
sorry,
they have no
it's
revenue
not-
generating.
Yeah, it's 10% the first year, 10%.
Okay, 10% the first.
10%, 20%, 30% as they go up for 10 years.
Is this being publicized in the newspaper on the front page or whatnot? Because, for more people to be aware of this,
It has
Of
been.
this,
these meetings.
yes, we properly advertised for the meetings.
Okay, but I did not, I heard about it this week, because I would have publicized it at my church, so
Mhm.
that there could have been more people here, to be able to discuss it. I attend all of it, and it would have been in our newsletter, so we would have had more people to discuss it.
We followed the law, Ms. Anderson,
Yeah.
by the, requirements. We put it out as required, based upon the desire for us to have more hearings, so.
So, and I can just quickly add on to what Councilmember Hoffman said, was we do economic development to promote great stuff in our community, not only a quality of life in our community, but it also, before this bill was even passed, we could have talked about potentially looking at our millage rate. I know Councilmember Hoffman doesn't want to ever lower it, but I would say that that's an option that we had on the table, because all this good stuff that's happening here, we may be able to look at without, now they put this in play, it kind of caps us a bit on what we can do. We're still good financially either way. So depending on the future of a 5-10 year plan, how our economy looks, we may still be able to have that discussion one day, lowering our millage rate.
And if the SPLOS, because we've done that a couple of times. I moved to Fayette County in 2000. So, and I was living in Tyrone. I just moved to Fayetteville in
If you can
2020. I just moved to Fayetteville in 2021, but I was living in Tyrone, so that is a part of Fayette County. Okay, so the SPLOS, we've had that 2 times. Okay, so I don't understand why we need to do that. If the infrastructure is in need of help, then why hasn't the SPLOS assisted with that in the past?
It has.
Okay.
But I wouldn't vote
So
for it.
I'll tell you one good example. So before I got here, we were spending in the budget $140,000 a year through state funds on road resurfacing. Ever since we got SPLOS, we are now at about 5.5 million.
Okay, I drive 314, and there's so many holes in that street. So where the money going?
So we I don't want to get back and forth on SPLOS particularly tonight, but we have a SPLOS the SPLOS plan.
Ms. Winnie,
which
you
is
can get me anytime, and we'll be glad to have
Well,
the
I want
discussion.
everybody else to know, but I don't want to just have a private conversation.
But so we have a SPLOS, a 6-year SPLOS. And through that 6 years, there's a total of $5.5 million for road resurfacing. But we had a company come in and do a study they rated all the roads. And depending on that rating is where that money was going to. We had the same thing done in the 2017 SPLOS as we did in the most recent 2023 SPLOS. So we are putting a dent into and then there's infrastructure, there's water and sewer infrastructure that has to be, currently even stormwater. So
Yes,
all the residents probably aren't aware of this, but there's $24 million of public stormwater that has to be repaired. And there's $19 million of private stormwater that it's not our responsibility to fix, but that's a big number. It's over $40 million of that. So there's a lot of expenses having old infrastructure that we have to repair. And so a lot of that money that's plus, when you say you don't want to do SPLOS, that's going to impact us another. So when that happens, we have to look at the millage then and say,
I
that may
don't
have to
mind
look.
doing it, but I want to see a difference.
Ms. Anderson, let me ask Ray, let's stay on point.
We'll have coffee
I
one day,
would-
talk
and
more
you
about
can- Ms. Winnie, you can be glad to talk to any of the council members or any of our staff later to things outside the purview House Bill 581. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Faye Moulton at 410 and Teton Circle. I'm here to speak on behalf of opting out of 581. The money has to come for our community services. It has to come from somewhere. Our schools would be heavily impacted, I believe, by staying in. Opting out presents more flexibility that we have to deal with issues down the road. Of course, we can always enact something on a local level. That can be our choice. But to opt into this takes away all kinds of flexibility, and I think you always are better off to maintain that flexibility. So I thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Ladies and gentlemen, come on, sir. As we explained at the first town hall we had, this is really a complicated bill, and we're trying to deal with it as best as we can, with best interests of not only the citizens, but in the long term, the impact on our ability to be able to provide services to the city.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for being here. I'm sorry the state legislature has put you in this position and us in this position. We didn't ask for this. They didn't know what they were asking for. And here we are talking a lot about something because we have to sort of backtrack a little bit to get to what the facts are and what the future will be. So one of the issues we talked about is 581 is permanent. It never goes away. It's there forever. I don't know how good your crystal ball is, but when you look at Asheville 10 years ago, what they have said, we're going to have to replace thousands of miles of roads because of a hurricane. We just bypassed that hurricane that close. And to have the funds available to do what you need to do to provide the services is important. I came 20 years ago now from the state of Washington, where the IMIN initiative was passed. There was an initiative that said, we think we're paying too much for car tabs. And I actually think car tabs is an appropriate user fee. People who are in the cars are paying for the roads and the maintenance. And they asked the citizens, do you want to cap it at $30? And everybody said, yeah, I'll cap my fees at $30. They've lost over $400 million in revenue for the state because of that decision that was based on, I want to save me $30, not what's good for the state. Because the state didn't do a good job of explaining to people what's going to be cut. We're in the same situation here. We're looking at projections, and I appreciate the numbers because they weren't available when we first started this, is that we're looking at 1, 5 years out. We're about 10, we're about 20 years out. The impacts that we have, people are saying, well, we want to cut the property tax for me, but what's the impact? What services are you going to cut to make up for that lost revenue? Are you going to cut police? You're going to cut fire? You're going to cut maintenance on roads? You're going to cut water infrastructure? So people are saying, I want less of my money going to you without any knowledge of what is being cut as a result of that. I think when you look at this, it's kind of the shut the door behind me kind of attitude, which, I'm in, fine. Do I care about my neighbors who move here 2 years from now and are paying more on a relative basis than I am in property tax? No, because all I care about is what I'm paying. And so the inequity is for the person next door who has the exact same value house is not fair to that person or the people coming in. And that's one of the whether intended or not, the issues of this whole thing. So we look at, and we know that you have a local option, property exemption if you go that route. You don't have to listen to the state. They don't have to dictate your business. But one thing I would caution, I heard 92 was just passed by the Senate. I don't know if the governor signed it. So 92 does not exist today. So continue on your process as if it doesn't. So until the governor signs it, it's not true, and right now you've got until March 1st. I appreciate you being here, I appreciate you listening to us, and I hope that you continue with the intent, and I understand that was part of the rules, so using that word. I hope you continue to opt out of this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
So you want to take this?
There's no one else, council members? Let me just say that what you are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, is this council not doing what is politically expedient in listening to the citizens, making a choice. There are a lot of municipalities who made the choice based upon what's politically savvy. They don't want to take the risk to say, I'm opting out or I'm opting in because, with some legitimate reasons. We're trying to make sure we make the right decision based upon what's in the best interest of all the citizens, based upon the feedback we get from you. Because we know that a lot of citizens did not understand the bill. So now that you do, hopefully you can make a reasonable expectation that we're making the best choice for the citizen. Council members? City attorney, anything? Okay. City manager, you can make a recommendation?
One of our concerns too with this is if we opt out is the potential with the other communities committing to opt in is the fact that we could be charged now
Yeah.
by the tax commissioner's office, and that could be, that could happen, which means it could be $100,000 more, 200,000, we don't know. It could happen, and it's been talked about. So I just want to put that on the floors before we. From staff's point of view, the last gentleman who just spoke, great points. The points that we've all talked about are concerned. Once you opt in, you can't opt out unless new legislation down the road is passed again. We talked as a team, and our hope, if we decide to opt in, our hope is that something is looked at more closely about this whole bill. Is this the right thing for our communities, our counties, and our community, and our cities here in the state of Georgia? But I'm going to go along with what I've heard from the other cities, that I think it's at this time the best for us to opt into House Bill 581. I said I'm recommending them to opt into House Bill 581.
Council members?
The deadline, right, as it sits now, because House Bill 92, as the gentleman mentioned, has not been signed by the governor, is March 1st. That's why we're having these meetings so quick together.
Okay. No other discussions from the citizens? I think this is the only item on the agenda.
So, also, I just want to mention too that we do have 2 other public hearings. It's up to council how you want to proceed.
Council members, what is your pleasure?
We don't have to do anything right now.
Yeah,
Well, we have to-
hey, Ray, I really don't think we should make this decision right now.
That's-
We have 2 other hearings. I think we should give more citizens a chance to listen in even more
Agreed.
and then make the decision.
All right, that is the decision of the council. I have a motion that we move forward with the other 2 hearings. Before making the final decision.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded that we move forward with the other 2 hearings before making a decision on this. Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much. Carried motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposers, nay.
Clarification, the next public hearing tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. and tomorrow evening at 6 p.m.
Ms. Whitney, get on the phone, call over, you bring that out there. Tell them 9 o'clock tomorrow and 6 o'clock here tomorrow. Okay? City manager, anything else coming before council?
No, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there's nothing else come before council, I will entertain a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, signify